Right, this Valentine's Day, we thought it fitting to review a book about marriage. It's not your usual love is in the air type of book. It talks more about the challenges men face before popping the question and how they tackle those challenges. A minute before, Lobolo aims to advise men about how masculinity has the potential to destroy a happy marriage. Now, I am joined by the author, Motha Mtshali. Thank you very much for your time here, Motha. Now, of course, a lot of people would look at a book that is talking about marriage or love and think, oh, who thinks they are an expert about love? Give us a little synopsis about the book before I start questioning you about the different chapters without giving too much. Of course, we want our viewers to go out and get the book.
All right. Thank you very much, Masego. Good morning to you and your listeners as well. So the book is basically, I didn't want to come off as an expert, The book is just me and my personal experiences, right, once I got married, So in me having those challenges, I had to go and talk to other men just to find out, how they're dealing with those, And then when I realized that they're as clueless as I am, even going back to my dad's generation, their advice wouldn't work, in my situation. So I was, in a way, I felt misled, to say now, this thing is difficult, and there's no one around where I can go and ask for help, So that's when I started to dig in and be like, let me do some research into the book. Let me do some research into relationships and love in the modern world, right? Where men are married to career-orientated women, women who don't want to be just wives and mothers, who want to be more than that, So the book is basically based on those experiences, right? On those relationships and how we as men deal with that.
What I found very interesting, of course, was how you spoke about, we already know that when men discuss marriage and things like that, as soon as you tell your friends that you want to get married, they call you a wuss and all those other things because you're in love, right? But what interested me in one of your chapters is how you spoke about men look at what it is that is perfect about the woman that they love, but never ask her about what is perfect about themselves.
Yeah, right. That's the challenge, and that's the challenge with everyone in general, right? The way we grow up knowing love, right? So love, I found that through the research that love has two modes, right? It's either you're being loved, right, or you are the one giving love. So we're so much used to being loved, right, from our parents, from our siblings, and we take that into adulthood, right? So we think when we get into a relationship or marriage, right, another person has to take care of our needs, So we always have that checklist to say, she should tick that, she should be this way and that way, right? And in a way, because we grew up from a generation where most of our mothers were housewives, so we don't ask our partner to say, Dali, what's your vision in our marriage? What do you want to see yourself as, So we don't want to find ourselves oppressing our women. So that's what you find with most marriages, to say a person wants to make a housewife out of a career-oriented woman, out of an independent woman, who doesn't want to be restricted within the four walls of a family home, So that's what I found, to say, no, man. Let's talk to our partners, because when you start to make that decision to say, I want to get married, that's when now you have to make a conscious decision to say, I will begin the journey of loving as opposed to being loved. So I will selflessly give myself to the next individual. So I need to find out their needs, how can I help them? How can I be of service to them? So it's no longer about me, but them, So, but in our own settings as men, it's always about that, what the woman does. It's like they are there for us. It's not a partnership,
I think that was very important. And I mean, also what I found is that what also plays a role is how we grew up, both men and women, the types of examples that were set up for us in terms of what marriages can be. You talk about a friend of yours who hated his father for marrying 2 wives, but did not support his children. And he promised himself that he would be different to his father, but he ended up being exactly the same.
Yeah, and I think we all fall in this trap, right? When you grow up, we think we romanticize love, we romanticize relationships, and we are fascinated with the idea of the one. And you in your head, you think, once I found the one, right? every relationship flaw I have, it will go away once I say I do, right? I'll be this perfect partner, as much as I might have grew up in a toxic environment, right? You think once you get into that relationship because you love that person, you think it's over, right? Only to discover that that's not the case. So it is important. I think I make that reference in my book to say, go back to how you were first taught about love, just recognize those traits which may be healthy in your relationship and the ones that won't be healthy. When I use myself as an example, I grew up with a very traditional father. He didn't do anything at home, right? Went to work, came back home, and went to sleep. Ate. So that was the type of home I was raised in. So I took that into my own marriage, right? Forgetting that my wife works as well. My wife, we go to 9 to 5, and then when we come back, she's the one who's expected to do all that, right? So when I realized how those little things cause resentment, in my relationship, that's when I was like, as much as that setup worked for my mom and dad, it doesn't work for me, So that's the same thing with my friend, He grew up in that environment, but because he was too fixated in not being like his father, he forgot to go to coaching, he forgot to go to marriage counseling and just fix those traits, which are subconsciously are in your mind, and he hasn't dealt with them to say, what are the consequences of having two wives, what are the consequences of having side chicks? So he didn't deal with that, because the approach we take normally when it comes to marriage and love, we think it's an enthusiasm, and forget that it's a tool. You have to work on it. It's a skill. You have to work on that skill for you to perfect that.
You then go on to talk about how you were sitting with friends in a very informal way, where there was a few bottles of wine available, to ask them what they thought women want. I realized that in that chapter, what women want, that's much longer than the last chapter where you talk about what men want. Why is it that the chapter with what women want is longer and the chapter with what men want is much shorter?
I think, as you know, we don't talk as much as men, so that's why our section would be shorter, But generally, I think, and that's the basis for my book, right, is that we are too judgmental, we are too critical on our female counterparts, because we feel like, and through history, they were the ones carrying in marriage, the responsibility lay with them, which is different right now. So whenever things don't work, whenever they complain, whenever they say, I don't have quality time, we never see it as an opportunity for us to rectify that, but we see it as them complaining, So I put down all those things to say, as much as in our own circles, we joke about it, to say, women, bafuna doko, they want quality time, they don't want you to have friends, but in detailing that, I'm also putting down experiences from other married men to say, how do they deal with that? How do they deal with your women, for example, not having a good relationship with the in-laws, how do they deal with you having friends, when you are told you have to cut down on friends because some of them are really bad influence, and as a man myself, I can attest to that, a lot of men, even the ones that are married, are very toxic, so sometimes you want to keep them, because of a strict trade, I won't be told by my wife what to do, but at the end of the day, you find that ruins the relationship, that kills the relationship. So I put that down so that at least, the people can see the similarities, in what different men out there think their women want, and how they can try, by all means to attend to that instead of just dismissing it as women complaining, And at the end of the day, the book is generally more about us, man, and our approach towards marriage, So I have to put down a lot of information about women and what we can do about it. So that's why the chapter is big compared to the one you mentioned.
All right. So in the first chapter, you talk about how every time you would fight, you got married at an early age. You were 23, I believe, if I looked at the book. You paid Lobolo at 23, or you started saving up for Lobolo at 23. And you talk about how your wife, Thuli, would leave every time you had a fight. But one day you spoke to your brother, and he gave you advice. Share with the viewers what advice your brother gave and how it worked for you.
You know, when I wrote that section, right, the intent for me, for really, when I was writing the book, because I was afraid that it would be misunderstood, you know, to be perpetuating certain stereotypes and certain behaviors, you know, that would be harmful to our women, right? So the chapter was basically, and the book is said for guys, I was like, these who are good guys, you know, the guys who really believe in love, the guys who want to selflessly, you know, be at the service of their partner, you know. So, however, I realized that most of guys who do that, most of guys who are loving, are the ones who are being played, you know. Even if you go back to our high school years, you know, most guys who were good, most guys who were career-oriented, most guys who were just focused in life, you know, they used to be played, you know. And I didn't understand that, why women would be attracted to the gangster type, to the guys who are collapsed and cold, you know. So, when I was going through that, right, I was sitting with a friend of my brother's, you know. So when we were having that chat, he was like, my wife normally does that as well, but it stopped because whenever he packed her bags, I would stop carrying, you know. Whenever he packed her bags, I would like, I'll let her go, just go and do your thing. But I would realize then and then that she wouldn't do that, you know. She would come back. So I did the same thing with my wife. I was like, because every time I try to beg, I feel like I'm feeling the desire for her to leave, for her to go back home, you know. So the more begging I did, the far away, you know, she seemed to go, like, from me, you know. So I was like, you know what, this time around, whenever we fight and she decides to pack her bags, I'm not going to beg, you know. So I did exactly that, you know. When she said that I'm leaving, took my car keys and went out, you know. Few hours later, I get a call from her. She was like, I didn't actually leave, I'm at home. So I was shocked that at times you find there is that what you call hard love, you know, that sometimes works, you know, but it depends on the relationship itself. Or sometimes it can work against you. You know, if you can look at my book, it's not your self-help type of a book. I'm putting down experiences that work and those that sometimes don't work. So it's up to the reader to decide, depending on his or her situation at home. You know.
All right, so how did your mother-in-law, has she read your book, first of all, and how did she feel about that chapter where you talk about how when you were still dating Mtshali, you guys devised a plan for her to spend the weekend with you when you celebrated 1 year, and that plan was to tell a big lie to a mother that Mtshali respected?
Fortunate, right? The book only came out last week, you know, so she stays in the bar. She hasn't had a chance to read it, but I think she will be shocked as well, you know, because I was also shocked, you know, as much as I didn't know her that much, we only knew each other for like a year, you know, that she could akambamanga that much, you know, just to be with me, you know, but at the same time, I fell in love with her for that, you know. The ability, you know, to still be respectful towards her mom as much as she's reached in 21, you know, just spoke volumes for me. And that's one thing I always say, to say, in marriage doesn't exist in a vacuum. You cannot be disrespectful in other areas of your life and think all of a sudden when you get married, you will have abundance of respect, you know. So those are the things I talk to people about, to say, how does your partner, you know, talk to their parents? How do they talk to people who are close to them? Because in the long run, that's how she's going to talk to you. That's how she's going to communicate to you. That's the attitude she's going to have towards you.
All right, Motha, just very quickly, it's Valentine's Day today. This is why we chose your book to review. As a man who got married very early in life and has been able to keep your wife happy at most times, what is your advice to people in love on the 14th of February 2021? Okay.
My advice is this, right? Love is not a feeling, guys. Love is not a feeling. Love is not an enthusiasm. Love is a choice. You make a choice to love your partner. You know, if we responded to our partners the way we feel about them every time, you know, we'll always be in fights. So you make a choice to say, as much as she's done something that may feel disrespectful towards me, for the purpose of our marriage, I will still love her. I will communicate with her in a loving manner, you know. So one thing we must bear in mind, things like Valentine's Day, those are just the fruits of love, you know. There's no gift that will replace a feeling of not being loved. If I'm not loving towards my wife, I can buy her a car, it won't matter. You know, if a wife is not respectful towards her husband, there's no amount of money or gifts that will replace that, you know. So love is just that, you know, just that commercial event, you know, but the really true and the roots of it, it's what we do for each other every day, you know, being able to help my wife at home, being able to take care of the kids, being able, you know, to do all that. Those are acts of love, you know, those are acts of love that should be cherished instead of all these materialistic things, you know, because when you sit down and talk with my wife, you only find the fulfillment in those actions, you know, in me being able to take care of her when she's sick, in me being able to wake up in the morning and bath our kids, take them to school, you know, that's where the feeling of love come from, as opposed, you know, to your 14th, you know, on the way I buy gift and then that's it.
Basically to play your part. Thank you so much, Motha Mtshali, the author of A Minute Before Lobolo. It's a book that we review today. If you're a person who likes to read, this is the perfect book, I think. It's not too long and you can get through it. And as you heard him, he's not an expert. He just wants to advise you on his experiences.